Hey everyone, welcome to the breakdown. Thank you so much for checking in. Appreciate it. My name is Dr. L, and once again, this is the breakdown. We're going to break down a situation that I think is really of growing importance, particularly for those in the minority community. So I've done some videos concerning what's going on in Washington, D.C., and about the rise of white supremacy, things along those lines. So I think that this is continuing with that frame. Forgive me, my windows open. I think I should be good, but if you hear some background noise, that's what is going on there. Let me just check and make sure that my reduced background noise is on. It is. All right, so let's go on with this. All right, so once again, hit the like button on your way in, subscribe, share, all that kind of good stuff. So right now we're going to jump into this, and we're going to start this off with Abby Phillip from CNN, and she's going to talk about the change in history that's going on within the White House. So the White House is now beginning to take aim and target the narrative about slavery, the narrative about history. And there's still a lot of people in this country who are very uncomfortable with what happened throughout the years. And had it not been for the things that have happened within history, we would not be who we are today. And we have to learn from history rather than trying to ignore it, trying to run from it, trying to reframe it, trying to change it. And I, for one, am very disappointed. I can't say I'm surprised, but I am certainly disappointed. So again, CNN Abby Phillip is going to chime in on this, and we're going to take a look at some ideas that our president has, our dear leader here. All right, so let's listen to what Abby Phillip has to say. We'll speed this up to about 1.25, try to get through this. We're only going to play a few moments of this. You can go over to CNN and watch this. And this is called CNN's Abby Phillip response to Trump's attempt to downplay slavery.
The table by arguing in part that slavery in America can't just be blamed on one race, and that museums put too much focus on the role of white people who participated in that terrible institution. And now tonight, that same argument is being pushed by the President of the United States. Donald Trump says that one of the reasons for his crackdown on Smithsonian museums is, quote, everything discussed is how bad slavery was. What we try to do on this program is create a platform for discussion and debate that reflects the very real differences that exist in this country. It's what echo chambers in our society fail to do, frankly. But on this topic, it's important to say objectively, slavery was indeed bad. It was evil, the nation's original sin. And it is impossible to understand the true history of this country without fully grappling with slavery's impact. Simply because of their birthplace and the color of their skin, the bodies and spirits of Black men, women, and children were exploited for profit and power. They were forced onto ships, bound by shackles and collars that ripped off their skin. One older man described it as iron entering our souls. Some chose to jump into the waters infested with sharks rather than feel that iron. Now, once they arrived on this very soil, they were forced to work by way of the whip, despite being starved, sleep-deprived, threatened, tortured, physically and psychologically. They were auctioned off, humiliated, fearful, and separated from their families and their children. Black women and girls were raped and sexually assaulted. Many were brutally murdered and mutilated. Now, this endured for decades, centuries. And even in the places where slavery was not legal, institutions from our banks to universities were built on enslaved labor in both the North and in the South. And for many of the white Americans who did not personally own slaves, they benefited from a caste system that concentrated wealth and political power in their hands. So when we acknowledge the existence of Black people who operated George Washington's Mount Vernon or the Black hands that built the White House, we are acknowledging the existence, the perseverance, and the contributions of the souls that white supremacy sought to erase. Those people built families, they developed a culture, they were the keepers of the faith, cultivators of community. And they are the ones who deserve credit for forcing America to rid itself of the stain of slavery. Now, all of this information, these stories are from the Smithsonian's African American History Museum. And I share this not as a lecture for you, but as a lesson. America, the superpower, is largely possible only because of the superpowers of people who went lifetimes without the same rights of generations who were boosted from their backs. True history should include everything. Yes, the evils and the horrors too. And museums are supposed to be places that protect those stories, the images, the lessons, the very things that inform so much of our current state of our republic, from racism to poverty. No matter how painful, or in the president's words, how horrible the lesson. Now, just listen to one formerly enslaved man describe what slavery is like in his own words.
You know what I'd rather do? If I thought that I'd ever be a slave again, I'd take a gun and just end it all right away. Because you're nothing but a dog. You're not a thing but a dog.
We are here in the studio with.
Okay, so they're going to do a roundtable discussion. I'm not going to play that because it just turns into. I don't know about this particular episode, but every time I try to watch Abby Phillip, it just turns into just absolute nonsense. People interrupting and can't get a word out edgewise, and people are just blatantly, flat out lying. This is why people have a problem with traditional news media. But I thought her monologue there was pretty good, so I wanted to highlight that. So let's go over to what is actually happening in terms of what the president is dealing with or talking about with slavery, right? So we'll go to Trump expands. We'll pull this one up here. Trump expands woke criticism, right? Okay, so we'll take a look at this here. And this comes from NPR. I do try to get things that are pretty non-biased here. And this was August 19th, a couple days ago as I record this. Trump expands woke criticism from Smithsonian to other museums. Can you all see this? Let me make it a little bit larger here. Make it a little bit larger. All right. President Trump expanded his criticism of the Smithsonian institution to include other museums in a long social media post on Tuesday. The museums throughout Washington, but all over the country, are essentially the last remaining segment of woke, he said. The post emphasized his ongoing displeasure with the Smithsonian, describing it as out of control. Oh, geez, everything's a terror. Oh my God, everything's out of control. We got to do something about this. They're coming to get us. And suggesting that museums around the country may face similar scrutiny. President Trump will explore all options and avenues to get the woke out of the Smithsonian and hold them accountable. Hold them accountable. You can fines. What are you talking about? Fines, prison, firings. What are you talking about? The White House said in a statement to NPR, he will start with the Smithsonian and then go from there. In an August 12th letter to the Smithsonian Institution, Smithsonian Secretary Lonnie Bunch, White House representatives said they plan to conduct an audit of 8 Smithsonian museums to ensure alignment with the president's directive to celebrate to celebrate American exceptionalism, remove divisive or partisan narratives, and restore confidence in our shared cultural institutions. In other words, once the whitewash the storytelling of slavery, they were indentured servants, they were workers who just weren't paid. Everything but the horrors that Abby Phillip tried to elucidate there. Trump's post on Truth Social accused the Smithsonian of presenting a narrative of how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Nothing but success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future. Sorry that what happened in the way that this country was established is so upsetting to you. So sorry about that, but it's the truth. We are not going to allow this to happen, and I have instructed my attorneys to go through the museums. Are they natural historians, or are they historians of any type? Or are they just going to do what you tell them to do? This is crazy. And start the exact same process that has been done with colleges and universities, where tremendous progress has been made. This country cannot be woke because woke is broke. I taught a class called. Well, I won't tell you what it's called, but it was about race and ethnicity, and this I'm teaching it again, and I had to change the name of it. They don't want to talk about it, and I'm assuming that they changed the name of it because they want the federal tax dollars, and they said if you want these federal tax dollars, student loans, etc., you can't talk about this. So they got to change the name. This country cannot be woke because woke is broke. We have the hottest country in the world, okay, and we want to talk about it, including in our museums. A number of museum and historical associations, including the Organization of American Historians and the American Association for State and Local History, have pushed back against what the American Alliance Museum described as growing threats of censorship against U.S. museums. Censorship, book bannings, burnings, changing of titles of college classes, courses, college courses. This is not just a concern for select institution. The AAM said in an August 15th statement, these pressures can create a chilling effect across the entire museum sector. Freedom of thought and expression are foundational American values, and museums uphold them by creating spaces where people can engage with history, science, art, and culture in ways that are honest, fact-based, and thought-provoking. Oh, you can't have that. The White House did not respond to a request for a comment about whether the governmental review of museums could have a chilling effect on institutions by threatening their free speech rights and limiting their ability to openly and honestly engage with the public. So that's what's going on there. Let's see what this says. Let's this is a little bit here. All right, let's read through this statement that he did. This is another executive order by this guy, right? I didn't read this. Oh, it's already on the screen here. No, it's not. All right, let's remove this. Stop screen share, present, share screen. Letter to the Smithsonian. Yeah, let's read this. Letter to the Smithsonian, internal review of Smithsonian exhibitions and materials. Yada yada yada. Internal review of Smithsonian exhibitions and materials. Dear Secretary Bunch, we wish to begin by expressing our appreciation for the brief tour you gave us recently at the National Museum of American History and the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and by acknowledging your work on behalf of the Smithsonian Institution, as well as the institution's role in shaping public understanding of American history and culture. We thank you for what you did, but we want to change all this. We are completely aligned with your statement that the Smithsonian is a welcoming place of knowledge and discovery for all Americans. We are grateful that you and the Board of Regents have expressed your commitment to the nonpartisan educational mission of this great institution. But as we prepare to celebrate the 250th anniversary of our nation's founding, it is more important than ever that our National Museum reflect the unity, progress, and enduring values that define American story. In this spirit, and in accordance with the Executive Order 14253, restoring truth and sanity to American history. God, this administration. We will be leading a comprehensive internal review of selected Smithsonian museums and exhibitions, and particularly we don't like this one. I'm saying it's not. We don't like this one about the African American stuff. We don't like all that, right? All the sadness and why we got to call them slaves and this and that and the other, right? This initiative aims to ensure alignment with the president's directive to celebrate American exceptionalism, remove divisive or partisan narratives, and restore confidence in a shared cultural institution. This review is a constructive and collaborative effort, one rooted in respect for the Smithsonian's vital mission and its extraordinary contributions. Our goal is not to interfere with the day-to-day operations or curators or staff, but to rather support a broader vision of excellence that highlights historical, accurate, uplifting, and inclusive portrayals of American heritage. Yeah, it's got to be accurate and uplifting, right? We got to smile when we're at there. When we come out of these museums, we got to be smiling and happy, right? The review will focus on several key areas: public-facing content. I'm not going to read all that. Curatorial process. These are lawyers talking about curatorial process. Exhibition planning. Who's planning all this, right? Collection use, narrative standards. Oh my God. The development of consistent curatorial guidelines that reflect Smithsonian's original mission. I'm sure all that's true. The initial review will focus on the following museums. Additional museums will be reviewed in phase 2. What are they? Marvel? Phase 2, phase 3. National Museum of American History, National Museum of Natural History. You gonna change natural history? National Museum of African American History and Culture. National Museum of the American Indian. Shouldn't it be called natives? I mean, what's going on with this? National Air and Space Museum. Is there something wrong with the Air and Space Museum too? Did I tell them the correct story about that? Smithsonian American Art Museum, National Portrait Gallery, Hirshhorn Museum, and Sculpture Garden. They even got a problem with the sculptures. Materials requested. They're going to go through all this. You guys can read all that, right? Digital presence, URLs, timeline. Within 30 days of receipt of the letter, we anticipate each museum to submit all requested materials, outlining the first 4 bullet points, including current exhibition descriptions, draft plans for upcoming shows. Oh my God, review of 250 review of America's 250 exhibition and program planning connect with curators and staff liaison from each museum will be designated to serve as a primary contact point. Our team will begin an on-site observational visits, conducting walkthroughs and current exhibition to document themes, visitor experience, and visual messaging. Oh my God, you guys can read the rest of this. Garbage. Absolute garbage with it. Absolute garbage. Absolute garbage. Let's see here. Do I want to read this statement from the AM statement? Growing censorship. Yeah, let's read this letter from. Let's read this letter. So here's a letter from the American. I don't even know what this stands for. American Alliance of Museums. For immediate release, Arlington, VA today. The American Alliance of Museums, the only organization representing the entire scope of the museum field, issued a statement in response to the growing threats of censorship against U.S. museums. Our country's 22,000 museums are cornerstones of their communities and among the most trusted institutions in American life. They tell our nation's stories from multiple perspectives, welcome people of all ages and backgrounds, contribute billions to the U.S. economy each year, serve committees, both rural and urban communities, both rural and urban, and protect the heritage we all share. In recent months, museums have faced an increasing external pressure to modify, remove, or limit exhibition programs. People trust museums because they rely on independent scholarship and research, uphold high professional standards, embrace open inquiry. When any directive dictates what should or should not be displayed, it risks narrowing the public's window into evidence, ideas, and a full range of perspectives. This is not just a concern for select institutions. These pressures can create a chilling effect across the entire museum sector. Freedom of thought and expression are foundation of American values, and museums uphold them by creating spaces where people can engage with history, science, art, culture in ways that are honest, fact-based, and thought-provoking. We stand with the hundreds of thousands of museum professionals in the U.S. who protect our heritage, conserve species, create unforgettable experiences, and serve their communities with integrity. We call on all who value our shared heritage to support the museum field and are resisting censorship so museums can continue to educate, connect, and inspire. America needs museums of professionals who steward them. They educate, connect, and help us with one another, something we can't afford. Very, very good. One last thing I want to read here. And this is again from NPR. And this is Trump vows to expand his review of U.S. museums. Can he do that? And I want to get down here. I'm not going to read through all this again. The president's post. I haven't read this article yet. Okay, the president's post in Truth Social was not clear. Was he referring to just the Smithsonian museums or to American museums more broadly? NPR asked the White House to clarify this issue. A White House official who requested anonymity because they had not authorized to discuss the specifics of the plan responded in the statement, President Trump will explore all options and avenues to get the woke out of the Smithsonian and hold them accountable. He would start with the Smithsonian and then go from there. The administration review could include many institutions, members of the American Alliance of Museums, including around 22,000 institutions across the country, everything from the giant internationally known art museums to historic houses, natural history museums, local history societies, and botanical gardens. This man's going after the gardens. What the flowers do to this man? Let's see. Many address history, identity, the environment, and other subjects that are politically polarized. Why is this stuff politically polarized? It is unclear what the timeline may be for these reviews, but what the measures might be for success and who will be doing the reviewing. In a statement to NPR Wednesday, the president and CEO of the American Alliance Museums, Marilyn Jackson, framed the issue as one of the creative and scholarly independence. She wrote, the idea of extending federal reviews to the nation's 22,000 museums misunderstands how museums operate. The vast majority are independent nonprofits guided by professional standards and community trust. Museums cannot and should not be subject to government review of their exhibitions. The integrity of museums depend on their independence and that's what makes them so valuable to the public. Does the White House have any specific museums for review? I'm not going to read that. You guys can read that. I want to know if he can do this. What are the legal challenges? That's what I want to get to. Why was the Smithsonian Smithsonian the first focus of the administration's attention. The Smithsonian is a unique case. It was founded by Congress and received 62% of its funding from federal sources. It also figures prominently in the nation's imagination as a major tourist draw in Washington, D.C. There are 16.8 million visits to the Smithsonian affiliated institution last year. NPR has reached out for comment from the Smithsonian institution, but did not receive a reply. Yeah, you can't reply to this. You got to kind of go along with this until you can figure out what you're going to do legally. Let's see. I want to get to whether he can do this or not. In Tuesday's post, Trump wrote that he intends to review museums in a similar way to the White House audit of universities and colleges. Is that possible? The Trump administration has argued that universities like Harvard, Columbia, and Brown violated federal civil rights laws by failing to protect their communities from alleged anti-Semitism. It is clear what legal argument the White House might make against museums. In an interview, Patty Gerstenblith, professor of law and director of the Center for Art, Museum, and Cultural Heritage Law at DePaul College of Law in Chicago, emphasized that museums have a First Amendment right of expression that is clearly established by case law, and that artistic expression is also protected by free speech. The question is, can he do this when they're getting so much federal money? And the question also, I'm not a lawyer, but could he and should he have been able to do what he did concerning the colleges that were just mentioned there? I don't believe the government could directly prohibit what the museum presents to the American public. It would be a violation of the First Amendment, she said. However, she said, freedom of expression does not necessarily mean that the federal government is required to pay for that expression. And there you go. Gerstenblith also said that funding and free speech issues are complex. Speech can be regulated, Gerstenblith said, but it can't be regulated on the basis of what's called viewpoint discrimination. So, for example, a funding agency could say, we're not going to give any money to any special exhibit, and that would be fine. But if they said, we will not give funding to a special exhibit that is a particular viewpoint, then I think that would violate the First Amendment. But there is another element at play, Gerstenblith said. Is this speech government speech or is it private speech? Because the government can regulate its own speech however it wants, including viewpoint discrimination, so to the extent is the government speech. Nobody can do anything about it. Someone argued that by funding a specific exhibit, it becomes government speech. I agree with that. What has the Supreme Court said about arts and funding? The Supreme Court weighed in with a landmark case in 1998 in a very different political era. National Endowment for the Arts versus Finley addressed whether the government could regulate art if they funded it, after Congress passed a law saying that appropriated funding was dependent on meeting a decency standard. In that case, 4 artists, Karen Finley, Holly Hughes, John Fleck, and Tim Miller, sued the NEA, claiming that the agency had violated their freedom of speech rights. The Supreme Court upheld the decency requirement. What are scholars and other experts saying? On August 15th, after the White House announced the Smithsonian Review and American Alliance Museum addressed what was called a growing threat to censorship, adding, this is not just a concern for a select institution. These pressures can create a chilling effect across the entire museum sector. Freedom of thought and expression are foundational American values, and upholds them by creating spaces where people can engage in arts, history, culture in ways that are honest, fact-based, and thought-provoking. Other professional organizations are also pushing back, including the Organization of American Historians, which called the proposed oversight an attempt to weaponize our shared past to serve political imperatives of the present and imagined future, and the American Association for State and Local History, which called the government's confrontation with the Smithsonian an affront to our country's cultural crown jewel, to history practitioners everywhere, and to the American people. Yeah. All right. So that's that. So, and the last story I want to pick up on here today is, just what I think aligns with this, and that is, no, that's not it. National Park Service. Right. So again, this all goes to this Confederate statue toppled during Black Lives Matter protest will be reinstalled. So the reason I want to connect all of this is to try to iron out this coherent point here, that they're changing history. They're happy about certain elements of history. They want to reinstall Confederate statues. Forget about the racial aspect of it. Forget about that. These people were traitors. They tried to overthrow the U.S. government. Is that forgotten? I know it's not forgotten. That's all sarcasm. Sometimes people in my comment section don't understand when I'm being sarcastic or not. It's obviously sarcasm. These people were traitors. These people would try to overthrow the U.S. government. Should we build and erect statues to the members of January 6th? Should we be doing that? Should we celebrate those people? We already let them off after they pled guilty and said they did it. Oh my God. The National Park Service is planning to restore and reinstall the statue of Albert Pike, a Confederate general and Freemason leader that was toppled during the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020. The restoration aligns with federal responsibilities under historic preservation law, as well as recent executive orders to beautify the nation's capital and reinstate pre-existing statues. The National Park Service said in a statement pointing to President Trump's executive order and making the District of Columbia safe and beautiful, and an executive order restoring truth and sanity to American history. Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, who represents Washington, D.C., said in a statement she would reintroduce a bill to permanently remove the statue. The decision to honor Albert Pike by reinstalling the Pike statue is an odd and indefensible as it is morally objectionable, Norton said. He resigned in disgrace after committing a war crime and dishonoring even his own Confederate military service. Even those who wanted Confederate statues to remain standing would have to justify awarding Pike any honor considering his history. The statue of Albert Pike has long been a source of controversy. Before it came down, it was the only statue of a Confederate general in D.C., though the memorial itself does not mention his military service, and Pike is wearing civilian clothes. Instead, the engraved words are author, poet, scholar, soldier, jurist, orator, philanthropist, and philosopher. The Freemasons dedicated it in 1901 in honor of his leadership, in honor of the establishment and the erection of white supremacy. Pike was born in Boston, but later settled. I'm not going to read the rest of that. I mean, that's just crazy. I don't want to read the rest of that and give this guy any comfort. So it just shows you there's some things that they're happy with, something that they're not happy with. Right? Comes to African American history, we got to do something about that. Botanical gardens, arts, we got to do something about that. But this guy who was obviously from the reading of this, I don't know anything about the guy Pike, but it was a disgraced soldier who resigned in dishonor and was a Confederate soldier, which means he tried to overthrow the U.S. government and tried to segregate themselves. Absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Let me know your thoughts, your opinions, and all that. So I'm going to leave this off with something that I think should be apropos to all of us. First, let me add this to the screen here. Let me take this off here. Stop screen share. Let me say concerning. People put this image up here. So this is from a show that I have not watched yet, but I'm going to watch. And this is President Trump is the most corrupt president. Trump is the most corrupt president in history. And this is from a podcast that I plan to watch as soon as I finish this episode. I haven't watched it yet, so I can't comment on it. But this is Ann Coulter on the left side of the screen there. And the name of the show is Trigonometry. The name of the podcast is Trigonometry. The episode is Trump is the most corrupt president in history. And when you have Ann Coulter, I haven't watched it yet. I did read through some of the comments. And when the persons in the comments are well, first of all, the people in the comments were blasting Ann Coulter. And from my estimation, for what I know about Ann Coulter, when she is against, some of the right-wing stuff that's going on, there's an issue. And let me also leave it off with this image here. And this was a saying, I don't know how true it is or how accurate it is to the particular place. First, they came for the communists, and then I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I am not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one else left to speak for me. So come after African Americans, the natives, they're going after the immigrants. The FBI and DHS are running around in Washington, D.C. ICE is kicking in doors and going to Home Depot and hanging out trying to get people. all the, and now they're changing this, but we can't get the Epstein files. Well, they're changing the Confederate statues, re-erecting them, right? Going after museums, trying to change or rewrite history. We're living through all this stuff. I'm actually reading through a book right now about the rise of the mustache guy out in Germany in the 1920s and 1930s. I'm reading that book right now. And listen, it seems to be that we're living through this. So we got to understand what's going on. We want to change or rewrite history. We want to change or rewrite what's going on in our colleges. We want to change or rewrite what's going on in our K through 12 education. And we're going to watch them do all this. And eventually they'll come for you. And there's nobody else to speak up for you. So, want to know why? And a lot of times black men in particular, black men are so egalitarian when it comes to so many different things is because we were always on the bottom of the pole, bottom of the barrel, unfortunately, in a social hierarchy context. So we align with ourselves a lot of times with women and with the LGBT community and many other communities, not wholeheartedly, not wholeheartedly. There are very many conservative black people. Don't come in my comment section saying nonsense, but overall, as far as a social aspect, we have a live and let live attitude because we know that after a while they might come after us. So it may be coming. So we got to be vigilant. So if you don't want them to come after you, whoever you are, whatever group you're a part of, LGBT, black, Indian, immigrant, poor, right? Poor white people, whoever you are, they may be coming for you next, right? So keep that thought in mind. Let me know your thoughts and your opinions. Hit me in the comment section. Much love and peace, everyone. If you have a story you want me to talk about, let me know. Let's see. Hit that thumbs up. And what else do I got here? Subscribe, share, hit the like button. All right. Take care. Much love and peace.